You're deep into a chess game, you spot a move that just feels right. You play it with total confidence, and then, boom, complete disaster. Your amazing idea somehow turns into a game-losing blunder. It is, without a doubt, one of the most frustrating things in all of chess.
And this quote, it just nails the problem perfectly. So often we're not really thinking, are we? We're just playing on autopilot. We make a move because it seems normal, or because, we've played it 100 times before. We're leaning on this vague, kind of untrained instinct instead of a sharp, reliable process. And that's the trap of just doing what feels familiar.
So that really is the million-dollar question. If our gut feeling can be so incredibly wrong, what are we supposed to trust? Well, here's the thing. The problem isn't that your instincts are bad. The problem is that instinct without a system is really just a glorified guess. What you need, what we all need, is a solid method to guide our thinking, to turn that raw gut feeling into the kind of sharp, refined intuition that strong players have. To build that system, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to stop thinking like a regular chess player and start thinking like a detective who's just arrived at the scene of a crime. Seriously, this little shift in mindset is probably the single most important step to finding better moves and finding them consistently. This is our new identity at the chessboard. See, a passive player just kind of stares at the board, waiting for a move to pop out. But a detective actively investigates it. Every single position is a case that needs to be solved, and it's full of clues, motives, and, even potential suspects. Your job isn't just to make a move, it's to uncover the truth of the position. And every good detective has a method. Ours is a really simple 3-step process. First, you assess the scene. That's just evaluating the position. Second, you identify the suspects. These are your candidate moves. And third, you check their stories, which means you calculate the consequences of each move to see which one actually holds up under pressure. All right, let's dive into that first step, assess the scene. This is the foundation of everything. Before you can even begin to think about what move to play, you have to understand what in the world is actually happening on the board. And the way you do that is by asking the right questions. Yeah, think of it exactly like that. You are interrogating the position. You're not just glancing at it, you're looking for the hidden story. What are the key factors here? Check the king's safety for both sides. Look at how active the pieces are. Are they working together? Or are some of them just sleeping on the back rank? Analyze the pawn structure. Look for those strengths and weaknesses. And of course, a quick count of the material never hurts. These are the clues that tell you what's really going on. And here it is, the exact checklist you need. These 3 questions from the great chess coach Jacob Aagaard are like your secret weapon. Number 1, where are the weaknesses? And I mean for both sides, including yourself. Is there an undefended pawn, a shaky king, a juicy square your opponent can hop into? Number 2, which is my worst placed piece? Listen, your army is only as strong as its weakest link. Find that knight stuck on the edge of the board or that bishop staring at its own pawns and give it a real job to do. Improving your worst piece is so often the best move you can make. And finally, the big one. What is my opponent's idea? Remember, chess is a 2-player game. Your opponent has plans too. You have to be a detective for their case, not just your own. So having a method during the game is one thing, but a great detective doesn't just show up to the crime scene cold, right? They spend years honing their skills. They study old cases, and they learn to spot patterns that everyone else misses. So the question becomes, how do we train our minds when we're not playing? This slide shows the huge difference. On the left, you've got the classic trap of the casual player. They're basically, as one FIDE master put it, addicted to playing. They think that grinding out more and more blitz games is the secret, but a lot of the time, that just reinforces bad habits. On the right, you have the detective. The detective knows that real, systematic improvement comes from deep analysis, looking at your own games and games from the masters. It's all about quality over quantity. And what does all that deep analysis actually build? It builds the detective's superpower, pattern recognition. This is the skill that separates the pros from the amateurs. It's like having a massive mental library of tactical ideas and strategic plans. When a master looks at a position, they aren't calculating everything from scratch. Nope. They are instantly recognizing hundreds of familiar patterns that tell them which moves are promising and which are just a waste of time. This is what trained intuition really looks like. So how do we train this superpower in the most direct way possible? The answer might actually surprise you. You study the end game.
Now, why the endgame? Because endgames strip away all the complexity. With fewer pieces on the board, the unique power of each one becomes crystal clear. You learn about king activity, pawn promotion, and creating advantages in their absolute purest form. These fundamental patterns, they're the building blocks for all of chess.
And this is exactly why it is so, so important. As the quote says, if you neglect your endgame knowledge, it just doesn't matter how brilliant your opening or your middle game is. You will consistently fail to convert winning positions, and you'll lose drawn ones. It's like building a beautiful house on a really shaky foundation. It might look good for a while, but sooner or later, it's going to come crashing down. All right, let's bring all these clues together and officially close this case. We've gone from playing on autopilot to adopting this focused, methodical mindset of a detective. Now it's all about putting it into practice every single time you sit down to play. So here's your case file, the key takeaways from this whole thing. First, stop playing based on some vague feeling and start a real investigation. Second, on every single move, you've got to interrogate the position with those 3 key questions. Where are the weaknesses? Which is my worst piece? And what is my opponent trying to do? And third, build that detective's intuition through deep analysis, especially endgame study, instead of just mindlessly playing more and more games. So the next time you sit down at the board, you have a choice. You can let the autopilot take over and just, hope for the best, or you can put on your detective's hat, interrogate the position, and take true control of the game. The choice is yours.